Hello and welcome. Today we've got Ian Clark and we are going to be discussing what is Solaris. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to our Telegram channels and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave the link below in the description for the full interview. Unless, of course, myself and Ian can choose our words wisely due to the insane censorship that's happening right now. Ian, thank you for joining me. How are you and what have you been up to?
Oh, doing great, Nicholas, and it's great to be back. I've been up to a lot. So every single day is filled with all kinds of clarity, like things getting clearer and clearer and clearer so that we can have a more efficient use of our time, our energy, and our resources in order to become more valuable. That's each one of our responsibility is to make sure that we are bringing the most value on the earth to everyone around us that we're impacting. So that's what we've been up to, and it's a journey, and it's getting more definitive every day. So it's exciting to be able to catch up on these things.
Absolutely. Now, we were speaking about Solaris, and you were saying that there are important big things that we need to move away from our healths in order to extend our lives and our have good life longevity, if you like. Do you want to explain what that is exactly? And if you'd like to give us a small presentation of what that is, and then we can go ahead with some questions.
Sure, that'd be great. So yeah, it involves two things. It's the purging of the things that you don't want to have in your body, and it's the replenishment of the things you do want to have. And so I was just sort of thinking back, what are the things that we all do the most in our life that have the greatest impact on us? And you know that you think more than anything else. That's unobvious. But let's just think about the kind of thoughts. So we have our conscious thinking that we're having right here in this conversation today. We have our subconscious thinking that's all based upon our previous experience in our life, our genetic history, our education, our political, spiritual views, just all the things that we have been programmed with our whole lives, plus your own personal experience, what you've been through in your life to bring you to this day. And so you are a product of that. And that's your subconscious. Deeper than that goes into the trillions of thoughts that are automatically happening within your body that need to be nurtured and supplied proper nutrients and elements, also pathways clear. Just think about the number of thoughts they've measured to touch your index finger to your thumb is 80,000 thoughts. And so you can sit there, you and I can sit here and go like this and talk and think about what we're going to talk about in subject matter. So there's so much happening in the background. That's our body intelligence. So we think more than anything, by far more than anything. The second thing we do more than anything is we breathe. We're breathing 11,000 liters a day into our lungs and 11,000 liters out. That's a lot of air. And that's the average adult, 11,000 liters a day. Now that air is the number one nutrient. You can only live a very short time without that nutrient, just minutes, right? And so how important is the breathing aspect of our life is of utmost importance. It's the top level nutrient, period. And then the third one is you pump gallons and gallons. I don't have the number of gallons. I should have written it down, but the gallons of blood per day, but it's 86,000 pulses. And people think, oh, it's a heartbeat, 86,000 heartbeats. Well, yeah, there is 86,000 heartbeats. But if you look at your body under a microscope, you'll see all the microcirculation capillaries. You have all of your veins and then your big arteries. Every wall of the miles and miles and miles of your cardiovascular system has little muscles in it, and they pulse. So you got 86,000 pulses times millions all the way through your body, miles and miles, right? It's not just your heartbeat. Your heart is the intake and the output, from your lungs and going out to your body, to your extremities. So it's bringing in the oxygen from your lungs, which is your number one nutrient. And the root cause of all disease is hypoxia. That's a known fact. It's not heavy metals and mold. Those are exacerbation things. The number one problem with disease is hypoxia, which is not enough oxygen getting to the cells. So the more a person ages, the more they plug up, the less oxygen gets to the cells until they eventually get old and die. or so getting oxygen in there is the biggest deal. You're responsible, Nicholas, to make sure your pathways are clear as possible, especially if you've been exposed to things like rubber dust. 10 billion pounds of rubber dust per year are released in North America alone off the tires that are spinning at 70 miles an hour, going a mile and a half up above the highways. It's nano rubber, epoxies, plastics, chemicals, metals. It's like nano. You can't even see it, but you can sense it. And that's going into our bodies through breathing and also through the food, because it goes all over to the top of mountains to the bottom of lakes. That's just one example. So it's our responsibility as people to take care of this body. This is our interface to the land of the living. And we now have the access to the information and the raw materials. That's the things you're going to consume, whether it's through food, fluids, supplements, oils, whatever. And that's going to allow your body to function at the highest level so you can get the oxygen to the cell. This is the most important nutrient in your life. So that's where that leads into the talk about, okay, what's the most effective way of doing it? How do I spend the least amount of time, energy, and resources like money to be able to get that result that I want, which is the oxygen deep in, all the nutrients for all my organs, like cellular nutrition, cleansing and nourishing our body every day. So we're compensating for this environment we're in. We haven't seen in the last 100 years the amount of pollution that we're dealing with today, and it's increasing all the time. So we're dealing with a pretty intense environment. And I think it's just a matter of us making sure we're definitive and being the most effective things. And that's where the Solaris comes in.
So let's talk about Solaris and what form it's in. Is it a pill? Is it a liquid? Do you want to explain the instructions of use, who it's good for, how old you have to be? Can anyone use it if they've got pre-existing conditions? And, how often do you have to take it?
Well, Solaris is not a thing that you would necessarily do every day. You might do a small amount, for your whole life. That's fine. But Solaris is something that you can go in and you use. First of all, it's an ancient Ayurvedic blend. Ayurvedic simply means from deep in the Indian culture, because you have, your Asian medicines, your classical Chinese medicine, your traditional, the Ayurvedic wisdom from India, which is the use of different herbs in certain formulas. So this is the most definitive one. It's a cloves, thyme, rosemary, and oregano. But it's in a super microdose, but it's extremely strong. Because of the way that it's made, it goes into water. It just disappears in water. Because normally they're in the form of an oil. But when something that's supposed to be oil disappears in water, there's something up. That means that it's fully bioavailable. I've never seen anything that goes in so fast. I made the mistake when I first got it of squirting it in my mouth straight, thinking, oh yeah, it's just one little dropper ball. I put 42 drops right in my mouth. And I regretted that immediately because it froze everything. And now trying to drink water to wash it down, there's none of that. It's gone in through your tongue and your cheeks, down your throat. And it was quite an experience because it kind of froze my vocal cords for a little while. But 2 days later, my voice went crack. And then a deep resonance hit my vocal cords like I'd never had before. And it was very good for me. You can't harm yourself with this. But I wouldn't suggest people to do that because it's just uncomfortable. So what you're supposed to do is put 10 drops in an 8-ounce glass of water and drink it back. That's for if you're just at a regular pace to get stuff out of your system. So what it does is it goes in and it dissolves to inert matter, anything that's not supposed to be in your body, any non-human debris, whether you've breathed it or you drank it or you ate it or you had it injected, because people over the years, they take a lot of different pharmaceuticals and all those chemicals have a residual effect upon the body and they store in the tissue. So this is a known thing to go in and clean that. It's just a cleanup, mop-up operation. Heavy metals that aren't supposed to be in your body, they're going to come out. But they're going to cut, and it's not a chelator. A lot of people look at chelation like zeolites and various different things. This is not what it is. It takes those harmful substances and makes them inert. And your body just eliminates it as normal. You can put it in your skin. It goes on lesions. It helps it blows up all kinds of weird things in the skin. We're not going to mention different names for what that stuff is. but it blows it up and gets rid of it and leaves it with no scar. So it's this very interesting product. We actually did a clinical trial with it in November, December of 2019 and January, February of 2020. This happened in Kenya. And over there, it had 100% delete rate on malaria. And this is like a real clinical trial. This isn't some, oh yeah, we said it, right? We're talking about doctors licensed with the Kenyan government, got clinics set up, test kits for every single person to tell if they were positive or negative with malaria. And malaria is such a massive international killer. I think it's the biggest killer out there.
Wow.
So just two drops of this stuff in 12 hours eliminated 45% of them. That's how powerful it is.
So if it can, help malaria, what other illnesses do you think it could potentially help without using obvious words due to the censorship on YouTube?
Oh, well, there's everything. Like anything that is non-human that shouldn't be in your body has to go. Now, people, like I went through this whole thing years ago, back in 2004 to 2006, where I had this tumor growing in my body. And I thought, and they want to call it cancer, right? Well, it wasn't cancer. It was a growth that came into my body that looked like a tumor, had acted like one. It got bigger. It grew satellites. It was in the bottom of my abdomen. And it took 5 years to get rid of. It left when it was done its job because my body wasn't detoxing properly. And my body made a thing that was like, hey, Ian, you're not detoxing. And we have to make this thing that's not part of your normal body operation to be able to get rid of junk because you're not getting rid of it. And that was an alarm that went off. When I realized what it was, that it was, huge amounts of fungus and yeast overgrowth and heavy metals and bacterial overloads and chemical and, just blah, right. And I started to work at the root cause of all that stuff and get rid of those things. It took 5 years. And then just finally, my body dissolved that out of itself. And there was no surgery ever. And it went away. So when I saw that happen, I went, wow, that's very interesting. That was there. It was there to help me. It wasn't there to harm me. But if I didn't pay attention to it, it would kill me. Because my body then was so bad, it just has to be taken off the scene. And that was a big learning curve. I had to literally physically experience that for 5 years.
So let's take, please, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Now I was going to say, let's take somebody who doesn't have any, pre-existing conditions, and they decide to take extra precaution, and they want to take Solaris, if I can pronounce it properly. What kind of, how should they feel after they've taken it a few times, physically? How should they feel or mentally? Assuming that they have no pre-existing conditions and they're young and healthy. If you'd like to answer that.
Well, the younger a person is and the healthier they are, the more that they are going to see an energy that will come from it, because it doesn't have any energetic properties to it at all. Mm-hmm. But what's happening in your cell, you have millions of mitochondria in each cell of your body that are producing your ATP energy. So what drops energy is the heavy metal problem, the fungus, the debris, the junk that just gets in the way. Not enough oxygen getting in the cell, not a proper elimination, a lot of smoke, so to speak, that happens when you're burning nutrients. You eat food, right? And you got the good stuff, the anabolic, you got the catabolic, the stuff that you have to deal with. So what this stuff does is it allows the cell to operate at a much, much higher efficient level. And it also extends the life of the cell by getting all the stuff out of the way that makes the cell die faster. So every time you have a shorter lifespan of a cell, it means it's quickening the aging process in your body. So what you notice is a definite energy upgrade because it's getting your cells to work better by just getting junk out of the way. It itself is not a nutrient. There are no stimulants in this product. But so that's an immediate noticeable thing. Definite mental clarity, because any kind of heavy metals that are circulating around into your system mess with your neurological pathways. Literally neurons, you can see under microscopes how it's affected by mercury, for example. And everybody's got mercury in their system. You don't have to have mercury fillings to have mercury in your system. You simply have to be breathing the air around you. and all the nano stuff that comes in. It's a cumulative effect, depending on how much your body was filled with mercury in the womb of your mom is going to affect you as an adult. And these things are passed down from generations. So anyone at the earlier people catch themselves to be able to get up to speed and bring their body into a position of equilibrium, the better. And so if somebody's very sick with something, they're going to take it. They may notice their body wants to rest quite a bit because it's going to be detoxing and eliminating. They'll see stuff come out of their body that's interesting. It's also antimicrobial. I'm not going to use the other kind of words that would be, questioned, but it has, it's removing like the heavy metal energy. It turns it into an inert matter. So many things that people use for getting heavy metals out of the body, I consider dangerous because they might pull it out of one area and then, oops, they have a leaky gut, it goes right up into the brain, and then they get these headaches. This is a very bad thing because instead of just having it now in the gut or somewhere in other organs, now it's dumped into the elimination system, but it didn't get out properly because it leaked. So heavy metals are a big one.
So we know that most of us are around iPhones, Androids, laptops, chargers, lights, light bulbs. The gigahertz and radiation, it damages our cells. Do you think that this Solaris, do you think that it reverses that?
Well, it will take away the communication side of those heavy metals, and there's so many different heavy metals that you don't want. And your body has the periodic elemental table in it. You just want to have the exact right amount in equilibrium. So this kicks out that communication for sure. But more importantly than the Solaris on that level is the remineralization. So the very first product that I ever ran into that made the biggest change for my overall body equilibrium was a food product. It's a nanonutrient called Oceans Alive. It's a marine phytoplankton. That founded the company 15 years ago. And it's been our premier product all the way through because when you take that, now you've got super clean fuel and you've got every single mineral from the ocean, which is, the base of Oceans Alive is ocean minerals, which are actually metabolized by marine phytoplankton over millions of years or thousands of years or however long it's been. And you're now getting the communication. So just think about crystals in a radio. It's all crystal communication. Minerals are like crystals, healthy crystals within your body that allow communication to happen, whether it's electrically, which is measurable, or biophotons. So your body, biophotons are the speed of light, and the electrical and the magnetic resonance within your body is shielding you from all of these unnatural things. Like if you're walking your bare feet in the Colorado mountains, not anywhere as close to a cell tower or some satellite blasting you or whatever happens from above, I'm not really sure. But they got some pretty powerful stuff up there. Or the triangulation thing. But you're on your bare feet on a summer day on the mountains. Think of that type of an atmosphere within your body. But you have to create that internally with these different products that get rid of the communication stuff that would communicate with a cell tower or a Wi-Fi. Because we're all hammered with it all the time. So you've got to shield yourself. You got to just come to grips with it. We're not going to be barefoot in the mountains in Colorado anytime soon, as much as we would like to be. Mm-hmm. Maybe people down by the ocean can get on the beach and, remineralize that way. It's great. Breathe the negative ions. But taking proactive steps to have these super powerful nanonutrients, elemental, things like iodine, all like from the perfect iodine. But the base of Oceans Alive is your entire ocean spectrum. If you cry a tear, is 1/3 strength ocean water. Taste it, it's pretty salty. Right. So those are the salts that you resonate with.
So let's talk about the heavy metals that we get from canned or tinned food and even water. If people that drink tap water, we have heavy metals coming out from there. So does that include that as well when you speak of heavy metals?
Oh, definitely. Because you go to a restaurant, they mostly don't filter the water. You're drinking literal tap water. It's like, forget it. You got to make sure your water's clean. You got to make sure it's mineralized, it's structured, and you're hydrating. And then there's a whole Brown's gas hydrogen conversation that's really important. But those are the more broader spectrum things. What you're mentioning there is your day-to-day potential intake that is happening to you, like we talked about the rubber dust, jet fuel, exhaust from trucks that is not being burned cleanly, whatever. There's a lot of stuff. And then what you're drinking in the water, obviously, you got to just make sure your water's clean. I don't touch any water that I don't know where it comes from and how it's made. Because
absolutely,
yeah, that's one of the things you do a lot of, right? Aside from pumping blood, you drink lots of water and then you eat lots of food. So your respiratory system, your circulatory system, your digestive system, you don't want leaky gut, IBS, all that stuff that goes away. By the way, the Solaris is a major upgrade for a digestive tract. If people get yeast overgrowth, that balances itself right out because you need yeast. You just don't want to have too much. So that's why, a 90-day protocol in Solaris is a major upgrade for people, even if it's only 10 drops a day. If they know they've been exposed to something, they got to take more.
Let's talk about the heavy metals that are found in the healthcare system's food when we have to stay in their premises because we're ill overnight or we're having an operation, because we know they don't feed us home cooked food.
That is the full on Franken food. They buy the cheapest garbage they can find. They have no consciousness around how that they're producing it. It's produced in aluminum pots. It's like, yo, you really, if you know you're going into a facility like that, do your very best to bring sustenance that you know is clean, and just try not to eat anything in those environments. You don't want to knowingly damage yourself if you can avoid it. I know that sometimes it's not avoidable because people just can't prep, and maybe the hospital won't even let you bring it in. If they're, intensive care or something, then you really got a problem. But anyway, yeah, that's.
You would expect in the healthcare system, that would be the number one thing that would be a priority, to keep you going and to fill up your stomach and your nutrients. It's not just, what the, I don't want to use that word, but, the corporation that issues those treatments, because it funds the establishment. But you would think that, you're in healthcare system premises, staying there overnight if you're having an operation, etc. The number one thing would be nutrients and giving you the natural vitamins and nutrients, wouldn't it?
It would be if it was actually healthcare, but we know that the actual term is sick care. They call it healthcare, but it's the exact opposite. Absolutely. You and I are in the healthcare system. You have your own healthcare system, and I have my own healthcare system. I do not rely on any kind of so-called healthcare system out there.
Absolutely.
You and I and the whole audience is responsible to become knowledgeable, very well read, and get the definitive information. Because if you try to go and find natural healing gurus or whoever, they all differ. They're all saying something against each other, trying to get followers, trying to get people to follow them. This is the biggest red flag ever. You want to get access. You and I, our responsibility is to give people access to the definitive information that they can use themselves, make intelligent decisions based on intelligent intel, right? And then see the results, because in the physical world, seeing is believing. And I've seen so many things that didn't work and a very few things that did work. So that's the filtering out, right?
Speaking of accessibility, I will happily leave the link below if you can send me over the link after. Ian Clark, it's been an absolute honor to have you. Thank you so much for educating us about this. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
I think find things that are going to bring joy in your life, because the joy brings enthusiasm, and the preliminary lead up to joy is sometimes suffering. But if you suffer for doing good, that's the best kind of suffering. If you suffer for doing something that's off the menu, then that's not cool. But build joy, real joyful energy in every cell, and get your enthusiasm up, because that's your strength.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ian Clark, and we'll speak again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, bye-bye.